Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well, happy, healthy, and moisturized and staying cool because it is July. Or if you live in Australia, then it's winter, I think, so hopefully you're staying warm in that case. Anyways, this is a bit of a shorter compilation. There's only 3 stories in this one. One is from Japan, one is from Bangladesh, and one is from what was North Vietnam. They're in no particular order, so yeah. Anyways, I hope you do enjoy them. So pull up a stump as always, and thank you for watching the video. I'm from Bangladesh, and although most of the major cities have developed infrastructure, some of the more isolated villages are still pretty much just in the dark ages. There's no electricity, there's no power for lights or any of that stuff. They are surrounded by dense and thick forests, and the villagers have a lot of stories of witches or jinn that live in the trees and sometimes come into the villagers' huts and possess them. When I still lived in Bangladesh, my mom worked as a representative for poor villages. Her job was to basically go to villagers around the country, provide them with aid and food, and establish a rapport with the people in charge there. She would sometimes take me and my sister along with her. This happened when I was about 9 or 10, and is something that has stayed with me until this day. We went to a particularly isolated village. The closest town with electricity and any sort of law enforcement was at least 2 hours away, and that's by car. Right as soon as we got there, something was off. Apparently one of the villagers' sons was acting very strangely. They had him locked up in a barn, and people were gathering like it was a circus show. My mom had forbade me to go there, but while she was busy working, I snuck over. And what I saw chilled me to the bone. The kid was about my age, completely naked and foaming at the mouth. He was covered in oozing sores. A man threw a live chicken into the barn, and the kid grabbed it by its neck and bit its head right off. One of the men told me that the kid was possessed by a churail, a witch spirit, with the face of a woman that could only be recognized by its backwards feet. And being a city boy, I just laughed it off at the time. Later that day, I met a boy and a girl from the village, and we began kicking around a soccer ball I had brought. Then I went home. That night, when everyone was asleep, I woke up suddenly. I looked out the window to the barn where the boy was kept, only a few yards away. I saw the door slowly open, and something came out. It was this huge, towering figure. I thought it had to be at least 10 feet tall. Its face covered by black, scraggly hair. It was wearing a stained white robe and walked with a strange limp. In the full light of the moon, as it got closer, I could see its feet. They were backwards. My heart started pounding. I wanted to run to my mom in the next room, but my body was frozen in fright. I watched as the thing got closer and closer until it was only a few feet from my window. I looked at its face, and my blood went cold. It was the face of the little girl I had been playing soccer with earlier that day. At that point, I don't really know what happened. All I remember is blacking out, and I woke up the next morning. There was a huge uproar because apparently the villager's possessed boy was found dead in the barn. I couldn't find the little girl anywhere. I asked around, but no one could even remember knowing a girl with the description I gave them. I tracked down the other boy I had been playing soccer with, and he didn't know either. He said that he only remembered just the two of us playing soccer that day. So have you had any encounters with like a local cryptid or a fae or something of that nature? If you have, let me know down in the comments. So my grandfather fought in World War II, and he was a Gato-class submarine crewman, and the sub is out on patrol east of Japan somewheres, hunting some smallish Japanese Coast Guard ships or something. Everyone is deathly silent so as not to give away our position to listening ships. Suddenly everyone hears whispering, but it's in Japanese, and obviously nobody could translate it. He said it sounded like a young man's voice, but some other voices, women and men, were whispering almost under the main voice, but it was still in unison. Suddenly, the electricity goes out. Absolutely pitch dark. The whisper rises to a yell, and then a scream, and then stops. The electricity comes back on. Everyone is obviously scared. And then, to make matters worse, everyone hears a long scraping all the way down the hall, from bow to stern, as if fingernails were trying to rip the metal hull apart. Keep in mind that they're probably 200 feet deeper at this moment. A week passes. They have sunk 2 small merchant ships and are headed back to refuel and get more torpedoes. He says that they all hear quiet singing in Japanese. Then something begins tapping on the hull to the beat of the singing. I eventually showed him the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song from Dead Space, and he says that it was almost like that, but in Japanese. Some of the crewmen faint. My granddad says that he felt extremely nauseous at this point. One of the officers even had a heart attack. He says that he can't really explain the tension or fright in those moments, but he has never been more scared in his entire life. He was trapped in a metal box, hundreds of feet below the surface, tormented by Japanese water spirits, his words, not mine. Once they were out of Japanese waters, they surfaced for air to let the crew stretch out. On the hull and the base of the conning tower is a line of Japanese characters. Some crewmen copy it on paper and translate it. It's translated to Black Water, Black Ship, Black Souls, Black Curse. Says there were 4 parallel scratches along the starboard side, bow to stern. What about you? Do you have any stories about being out on the water and something really crazy happened? Let me know down in the comments. The date on this one is August 12th to 13th, 1968, near Chao Bang, North Vietnam. A group of Soviet engineers were working in this region, hoping to build a hydroelectric power plant, when they heard a rumbling of engines overhead. They all ran out of their tents and were surprised to see a black diamond-shaped object hovering in the sky, emitting a greenish-blue light. Moments later, the diamond-shaped object was struck by a fiery object that seemed to come straight out of the earth. There was a bright flash, followed by a powerful shock wave that knocked the Russians down, tore their tents apart, and swept away their equipment. Somehow, no one was seriously hurt, but the explosion deeply troubled everyone. For several hours, all the radio and communication equipment was down, and they had to wait till the next morning to report the incident to their superiors. They promised to prepare a full report on the incident. 2 days later, scientists found a black sphere-shaped object, about 3 meters in diameter, a short distance from their camp. The surface of the sphere was completely black and reflected no light. Even stranger, the sphere did not cast a shadow. The rays of sun seemed to go around and right through the object, falling on the high grass all around it. The scientists also noticed that the sphere was cool and slippery, as if doused with soapy water. One of the men attempted to scratch the surface of the sphere with a knife, but to no avail. They notified their superiors about their strange finding, and soon afterwards the group received instructions to set up a protective perimeter around the object and guard it until a special group had arrived. They were strictly warned not to get within 20 meters of the sphere, so the entire group, 5 men, camped exactly 20 meters away from the sphere. They had no idea what the sphere could be, and guessed it was some kind of new weaponry. After building a small bonfire, the men sat down to rest. One of the specialists, Boris Ivanov, wrote this in his diary, that the men rested uneasy, staring at the object with their carbines ready, just in case, as they waited for the Special Forces group to eventually show up and take control of the situation. Soon, one of the men, Vyacheslav, stood up and walked into the brushwood, which was in the direction of the sphere. The rest barely noticed, thinking he was just walking off to relieve himself. When he didn't return, the men began to nervously call out his name, but there was no response. They searched the area with flashlights but could not find Vyacheslav. Concerned and afraid, the rest of the men eventually gave up and returned to the bonfire. An hour later, another man named Peter silently rose and also walked into the brushwood, in exactly the same direction that Vyacheslav had taken. He seemed to move uncomfortably, kind of rocking back and forth as if he was very drowsy. A kind of anxiety suddenly enveloped the rest of the men. They remained sitting by the bonfire, unable or unwilling to intervene. Peter never returned. This time, the remaining men did not search for Peter, but simply sat and waited. A feeling of doom filled them. 2 hours later, Vladimir walked off in the direction of the sphere. It was obvious that he had no control, as if something were forcing him away from the bonfire. He also never came back. Now only 2 men remained, Boris and Sergei. Both were frozen with fear, refusing to move in the slightest from their positions. Suddenly, Sergei's face became distorted-looking. He stood up like a marionette and meandered away into the dark in the direction of the strange sphere. Moments later, Boris began to feel his body losing its terrified stiffness and beginning to move. Terrified, he grabbed his carbine and shot himself in the leg so that he wouldn't be able to walk away into an uncertain fate. As a result of the pain, he passed out. This action probably saved Boris. He woke up in the morning when the specialists arrived. They found him half-conscious by the now extinguished fire. He had lost a lot of blood, but he was still alive. However, the sphere had vanished, along with his comrades. He was soon thereafter evacuated from the area, but the event left him convinced that the sphere had been responsible for the disappearance of his friends. And this was posted on May 23rd of last year, and the source given that I couldn't find was Black Sphere in the Jungles of Vietnam, May 17th, 2004, St. Petersburg, Russia. So what do you make of it? Do you think that that is indeed a real encounter from 1968? Or do you think it could be exaggerated? Have you had a terrifying experience with UFOs? Let me know in the comments. So what do you think about those stories? Do you think they were all real? Do you think they were all fake? Do you think that they were maybe exaggerated for reasons that we don't know? Have you had your own experience that you would consider really creepy or something like that? Let me know down in the comments. And if you would like to support the channel, you can do so with the links in the description. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe and tune in for more and keep that stump pulled up. Thank you for watching the video.